Hello guys, I am going to record a lecture of very famous poem of 20th century, Wasteland by T.S. Eliot. In this poem, I will cover mainly with the topic of use of allusions and myths in the poem Wasteland. Here, we'll analyze mainly some important points. First, starting about the poem that when it was composed, how T.S. Eliot planned about it. Here I am not including the text of the poem, but generally about the myths and allusions. This poem, The Wasteland, which was T.S. Eliot started in 1919, not writing, but also he tell it about his friend Queen and Ezra Pound. In a letter, he informed Queen that he want to write a poem that he has in his mind. And this poem, Wasteland, he planned about writing in 1910 or 1909. It took nearly 10 years to complete the poem, and it was totally written in mainly the fragment style. After completing this poem, Eliot submitted to Ezra Pound, his best a poet friend, who mainly excluded many lines and sections from this poem. And later it was published in 1922 in 433 lines. So uh, the composition of Wasteland started 1919. Eliot wrote a letter to Quinch about writing the poem. Partly take the 10 years. He wrote this poem in fragment style, which was mainly incorporated into the poems later. On the advice of Ezra Pound, he also removed many passages, sections of the lines. The original title of this poem was "He to the Police in Different Voices," which he had taken from the Charles Dickens novel Our Mutual Friend. Critics consider this title support the theory of different voices, as in the Wasteland poem there are multiple characters, but they are not speaking. They are generally the mute, but only one character in the background who is speaking. They considered as Tiresias. The title of the poem Wasteland taken from the J.C. Weston's book on Grail legend, from ritual to romance. And this Wasteland was first published in the Criterion in 1922 in UK, and later in the month of November it was published in USA in the same year. Thomas Stern Eliot, a modernist playwright, a critic, an eminent essayist, and a great poet. He is a leading literary figure of 20th century, and he also got a Nobel Prize in 1948 for his works. For this poem, The Wasteland, I.A. Richard mainly said that this poem is the plight of the whole generation. And also T.S. Eliot said that this poem is not a social criticism, but he want to tell that this poem is generally the disillusionment of generation. Means the people of the modern era that are merely distracted on the path that is leading to them on not on intellectualism, but they are deviating from the path of intellectualism. Now, the use of allusions in the poem, there are multiple allusions that T.S. Eliot has taken from number of authors. For example, nearly he has taken 30 authors he described in the whole poem. So this poem start with an and the epigraph of the poem taken from the ancient Greek epigraph from the 48 of the Satiricon of Petronicus. Satyrion of Petronicus was the author. The meaning of the epigraph in English: For once I saw myself with my own eyes the civil of Cumi hanging in a cage when the boy said, The civil, what do you want? She replied, I want to die. So here he want to give us the meaning by this epigraph that there is the myth, the life is death and regeneration. So meaning death and regeneration is continue for the all the time. This was added actually after republication 1925. The poem is divided into five sections. The first part is the burial of the dead, the second the game of chess, the third fire sermon, and the fourth the death by water, and fifth what the thunder said. The poem Wasteland is full of many allusions. Eliot has taken from different authors and scriptures as Bible, Upanishad, Buddha's speech, Dante, Homer, Thomas Middleton, Richard Wagner, Shakespeare, John Webster, John Donne, Andrew Morville, Joseph Conrad, Aldous Huxley, Charles Baudelaire, and also from others. The poem was edited by Ezra Pound and so many lines and sections removed from the poem as I have told you earlier in the beginning of the poem. In tribute to the friend and fellow poet Ezra Pound, T.S. Eliot called Minglor Fabro. In English, the meaning the better craftsman. The better craftsman meaning is here that he crafted poem well. And this phrase echoes the tribute offered by Dante. He has taken this phrase from Dante's Purgatorio, and Dante wrote for this his friend, provincial poet Arnaud Daniel in Canto 26 of Purgatorio. So this was regarding the epigraph that he has used mainly in his poem. The poem ends with the Sanskrit allusions are referred in the form of the words datta, that means to give, dayabham, the means to sympathize, and damita, the means to control, which are taken from an Indian myth, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Eliot used allusions in the Wasteland is related to the theory of tradition. Actually, T.S. Eliot wrote an essay, Tradition and Individual Talent, in which he described that what we are learning or what we are writing, that is neither we have totally individual nor we have inherited from others author, but it is the mixture of both, that what we have learned from others as well as what is our individual. So whatever we are or whatever we are writing, that is mixture of both. So Eliot's allusion in the Wasteland is related to a theory of a tradition and to his exploration of the relationship of the past and the present. So here the Tiresias, with the character of both the past and present, as I. Richards remark, allusions in the Wasteland are a device for comparison. For the poem is equivalent in content to an epic. Without the device, 12 books would have been needed. Means we don't need the 12 books as this was the tradition to write any of epic. A poet or an author need the 12 books, but he wrote, the T.S. Eliot wrote it in only 5 sections in 433 lines, but it is like an epic in depth. So I. Richard preached this poem as a epic. It is also possible to read the Wasteland as an inventive act of literary history, and it is called the literary history because here T.S. Eliot added the things from Dante, Homer, Shakespeare, from age to age, generation to generation. He added many authors. He has taken the legends from many authors, which attempt to obtain a tradition and which makes a tradition, in which he mainly want to convey a message that how the things are interconnected, how the literature is interconnected, how the past is interconnected with the present, and how the present become the past. So it is not separated while it is included. In the poem, Eliot interpreted the past in his selection, arrangement, and treatment of allusions. So, the meaning of allusions, he attached everything with the second thing, and he treated all things in a connecting way. And what the connecting way he mainly called the objective correlative. The Eliot used allusions from wide range of references in the poem, and so it is used the multiple, what we can say, the hundred of the examples from other writers. The use of myths in the Wasteland. When Eliot started writing The Wasteland, he was reading Sir James Fraser's The Golden Book and J.S.T. Weston's From Ritual to Romance. These two books he was reading when he started writing the poem The Wasteland. The Golden Book is an encyclopedic study of myths. Means here he read the multiple things or multiple of myths in both books. He was deeply influenced by these books and these books gave the mythical background to the poem. And all the myths are taken from these two books. Miss Weston's book supplied him the myth or the legend of Grail and Fisher King, while the Golden Bow he derived his knowledge the number of vegetation and fertility myths and rituals. So from these two books he has taken different things, different myths. The vegetation myth, the myth of fertility connected with Adonis, the god, Attis, the god, and Osiris. The vegetation and fertility myth, winter is the season of death while spring is the season of rebirth. So here the vegetation symbolizing that how the life is going on, the death, the born, the generation to regeneration. And fertility myth, winter is the season of death while spring is the season of rebirth. As the poem start with April is the coolest month. Eliot uses this vegetation to make pattern of death and rebirth that is contained in the Christian myth. And also there is Christian myth going on that what is T.S. Eliot has taken this line mainly in contradiction from the Chaucer. Until the crucifixion of Christ and his resurrection, Christianity evolved from the myth used here as objective correlative. In previous slide, I wanted to explain. An objective correlative is a series of objects that one object connected with the second object in situations and events that may be sources of some special emotions of the poet. Means these situations, these objects, these incidents make an organic, the complete thing. So while personally, I want to say in this poem that the in whole poem Wasteland, these all things are written in fragments way that all things are not interconnected, while all things are mainly written in a scattering way. The Grail legend, the Grail legend, this is the myth Eliot taken from the old Holy Grail cup or dish that is used last the supper means this was the supper which was a kind of pot used by Jesus Christ. The myth is associated with the adventure of King Arthur and his knights round table. The Grail was supper in which the blood of the Savior was collected. The blood of Savior means the blood of Jesus Christ was collected in the spot when he was crucified. Earlier, he has taken, his food or whatever he liked when he was crucified, but a time came when original grail was disappeared from the chapel, and so this grail was kept somewhere to keep it maintained, but suddenly it was disappeared, and it was searched by a quester, the percival, a character of the round table or the knight of the round table who want to, you know, gain it, but they don't find. The next is the fisher king. The myth of Fisher King is crippled by a magical boon and spends his days fishing on a lake near his castle. So there was a Fisher King who mainly have the responsibility, who given the responsibility to keep the security of the Grail Cup, and later it was disappeared. His hands are dissolute. Here, the Fisher King is the symbol of the dissolute, infertile, or the symbol of barrenness, the symbol of wasteland. As a result of his wounds, his task with guarding and keeping the Holy Grail, he was mainly security of the Holy Grail. Holy Grail. In search of the Grail, the knight Percival eventually comes to the castle of the Fisher King, and Percival also comes to the castle of the Fisher King to find this uh, holy or what we can Grail cup, but he don't find there. Percival stumbles upon the Fisher King's castle. So, guys, this was some points or what I can call something about the allusions and myths. Now I want to explain in Hindi what I have spoken English, and in second part I will add from five different parts the allusions and mainly allusions I have discussed here the myth, but I left the Tiresias, so I will discuss in the next lecture. Now I want to tell something about the Hindi, so others also can understand. गाइस ये जो पोयम है टी एस एलियट ने लिखी थी, इसको उन्होंने पहले से प्लान किया था काफ़ी। जब ये 1922 में पब्लिश हुई है 1922 में, इसको उन्होंने मैं स्टार्ट किया था अपने मन में सोचा था 10 साल पहले लगभग। 1919 में क्वीन को उनका दोस्त है उसको लेटर लिखते और बताते कि मेरे दिमाग में एक पोएम है जिसको वो स्कैटरिंग फॉर्म में लिख रहे थे। स्कैटरिंग मतलब होता है फ्रेगमेंट, फ्रेगमेंट मतलब टुकड़ों में, थोड़ा लिख लिया फिर थोड़ा लिख लिया, अलग अलग चीज़ों से लेके लिखा। बहुत सारे ऑथर्स हैं जिनसे पढ़कर एलियट ने लिखा था। तो कंपोजिशन जो थी बहुत पहले स्टार्ट मतलब फ्रेगमेंट में हो गई थी। बाद में जो इसका टाइटल था, जैसे वेस्टलैंड हम पढ़ते हैं, टाइटल अलग था। टाइटल क्या था? ही डू द पुलिस। ये जो टाइटल था ही डू द पुलिस इन डिफरेंट वॉइस, जिसको उन्होंने चार्ल्स डिकेंस के नोबल अवर म्यूचुअल फ्रेंड से लिया था। और टाइटल इसके बाद जो है वो कहाँ से लिया गया? जेसी वेस्टर्न की बुक ग्रेल लीजेंड से, एंड फ्रॉम रिचुअल टू रोमांस। वेस्टलैंड पब्लिश्ड क्राइटेरियन अक्टूबर 1922 में पब्लिश हुई है, और उसके बाद यूएसए में 1922 में डायल मैगजीन में पब्लिश हुई। पहले क्राइटेरियन मैगजीन में हुई है, फिर डायल मैगजीन में हुई है। टॉमस एलियट जो है वो 20th सेंचुरी क्रिटिक, लिटरेरी क्रिटिक, ड्रामाटिस्ट, एसिस्ट है। 1948 में उन्हें जो है वो नोबेल प्राइज मिला है। और बहुत सारे ऑथर्स ने इस पोएम को पढ़ा है, क्रिटिक्स है। आई रिचार्ड है उसमें से, उसने इसको लिखा था प्लाइट ऑफ ए होल जनरेशन, मतलब लंबे समय से जनरेशन टू जनरेशन चीज़ों को ऐड किया गया है इसमें। और टी.एस. एलियट ने खुद बोला इस पोएम के लिए, ही एक्सप्रेस द वेस्टलैंड डिसइल्यूजनमेंट ऑफ जनरेशन, किस तरीके से भ्रम हुई है जनरेशन, भ्रमित हुई है, उसके बारे में पोएम है। फर्दर उन्होंने बोला है कि ये कोई सोशल क्रिटिसिज्म नहीं है, ये एक स्टेट ऑफ माइंड है, इंसान की जो मनोस्थिति उसके बारे में। यूज ऑफ एल्यूजन्स इन द पोएम, ये शुरुआत होती है पोएम की एपिग्राफ से, जिसको उन्होंने सैट्रिकोन जो बुक थी पैट्रियोनियस ने लिखी थी, जो कि लैटिन और ग्रीक में लिखी गई थी, उससे हुआ है। बाद में इजरा पाउंड को उन्होंने बोला है कि बेल क्राफ्ट्समैन, जो दांते उससे लिया गया, दांते ने अपने दोस्त के लिए लिखा था। जो पोएम है, होल पोएम 5 पार्ट में डिवाइडेड है, और 5 पार्ट में उन्होंने बहुत सारे एल्यूजन्स लिए हैं डिफरेंट ऑथर्स, जैसे बाइबल से लिया है, उपनिषद से लिया, बुद्धा के स्पीच, दांते, होमर, मिडल्टन, इन सब से इन्होंने जो है एल्यूजन्स लिए, मतलब लाइन्स लिए हैं। एल्यूजन है क्या? एल्यूजन मीन्स व्हेन समवन हैज टेकन एनीथिंग फ्रॉम अदर्स बुक एंड ही इज अप्लाइंग इन हिज ओन राइटिंग, बट नॉट एज ए थीफ, प्लेजरिज्म नहीं है, चोरी नहीं है। उसने कुछ दूसरे से लेके अपने में ऐड कर लिया, लेकिन पता है वो कहाँ से लिया गया है। बाद में इजरा पाउंड ने बहुत सारी चीजें इसमें से रिमूव कर दी। इजरा पाउंड कौन है? ये टी.एस. एलियट का दोस्त है, पोइट दोस्त है, जिसको उन्होंने क्या बोला? इन ट्रिब्यूट टू फ्रेंड एंड फेलो पोइट इजरा पाउंड, एलियट कॉल्ड इल मिगिलोर फैब्रो, इन इंग्लिश द बेटर क्राफ्ट्समैन। द पोएम लास्ट का जो होता है उसमें संस्कृत के एल्यूजन है। दादत्ता, 3 बार दादा यूज होता है, जिसका मतलब है दत्ता, दैट मीन्स टू गिव, दयाधवम, दैट मीन्स टू सिंबलाइज, एंड ताम्रता, दैट मीन्स टू कंट्रोल, विच आर टेकन फ्रॉम इंडियन स्क्रिप्चर्स। एलियट यूज्ड वेस्टलैंड रिलेटेड थ्योरी ऑफ ट्रेडिशन। ट्रेडिशन मतलब एक परंपरा, जो भी हम लिखते हैं वो कैसे आता है? एक तो हमारा व्यक्तिगत होता है, दूसरा जो हम सीखते हैं दूसरों से, उसको मिला करके लिखा जाता है। तो ट्रेडिशन एंड इंडिविजुअल टैलेंट से भी, और इस चीज को उसने इसमें अप्लाई किया है। आइए रिचार्ड क्रिटिक है और न्यूक्लिसिज्म। वेस्टलैंड को उसने बोला है कि वेस्टलैंड अ डिवाइस फॉर कंपैरिजन, द पोएम इज इक्विवेलेंट कंटेंट एपिक, एक तरीके से एपिक की तरह है। एपिक में 12 किताबों की जरूरत होती है, यहाँ 12 किताबों की जरूरत नहीं है, फिर भी ये एपिक के स्टाइल में लिखी हुई है। मिथ जो है, जो गोल्डन वो की बुक से लिया गया, गोल्डन वो जैसी वेस्टर्न और रिचुअल टू रोमांस से ली गई हैं, जिसमें फर्टिलिटी के मिथ है, वेजिटेशन के मिथ है, मिथ ऑफ फिशर किंग है, और ग्रेल लेजेंड के। ग्रेल लेजेंड क्या है? जिसमें जीसस क्राइस्ट खाना खाते थे, जिस बर्तन में पीते थे, वो पानी पीते थे, उन चीज़ों को इकट्ठा कर लिया गया था बाद में, और उनको बचाने के लिए उनकी जो ऑर्थरियन लेजेंड है, एक ऑर्थ नाइट है परसीबल, और फिशर किंग है। फिशर किंग को दी गई थी सिक्योरिटी कि तुम्हें इसको सेव करके रखना, लेकिन वो गायब हो गए। बाद में जो राउंड टेबल का नाइट था, राउंड टेबल अर्थरियन लेजेंड्स है, वहाँ से लिया गया है। और इसमें जो ग्रेल है वो गायब हो जाती है, परसीवल को नहीं मिलती। जब परसीवल फिशर किंग के वहां पे आते हैं, फिशर किंग है यहाँ पे, वो डेजल्यूट को सिंबल कर रहा है। डेजल्यूट मतलब उजड़े हुए को। अगले पार्ट में बाकी चीजें डिस्कस करेंगे।